Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has issued a statement on X, saying the malicious Zionist regime be punished. Attacking our consulate is like attacking our soul. The malicious regime has made a wrong move in this case. Well, Al Jazeera's Dorsa Jabari has more now from the Iranian capital, Tehran.
Operation True Promise appears to have wrapped up after over nearly 3 hours of a barrage of drones, ballistic missiles and cruise missiles that were launched towards Israel. Now, Iran has said that this is their right to defend themselves, and that is why they've launched this unprecedented attack against Israel.
And happy Sunday and welcome to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Sunday, April 14th, 2024, the day before tax day. I got my taxes done, so I feel okay. Again, this year, I will be getting nothing back, which I guess is the way it's supposed to work. Anyway, Val Atkinson is here. Hey, Val.
Hello, Ed.
Well, Val, we're going to jump right into this. The only graphic in the lead-in to today's program was the missile attack by Iran of Israel, and you know, these things can go either one or two ways. I don't believe, like a lot of people do, that there's some Armageddon that's destined to happen between the Muslims and the Jews in the Middle East that will lead to the second coming of Jesus, which a lot of evangelicals are hoping happens. They actually hope that happens, but we'll get to that later. What I do worry about, Val, is gas prices going up. Brent crude for tomorrow, I already saw the number. The prediction of the opening price for tomorrow is substantially higher, which could impact, gas prices. But let's back up. When you text me when the missiles started flying, and I was like, "Oh Lord, here we go. Here's an escalation in the conflict over there." What was your first thought when you heard that there were missiles flying out of Iran into Israel?
Well, if we would recall, Ed, what happened is that the Iranians warned Israel and the rest of the world what they were about to do and when they would do it and how they would do it. And this was all pre-planned because Iran wanted to ensure that Israel did not think this was a sneak attack or that it was an attack without an end date to it. They wanted Iran to know without them telling, they wanted Israel to know without them telling the Jews that this is in retaliation for you killing our top security generals in Syria at our embassy, which is an attack on us. That's what this is about. And we cannot face our citizens, Drake, plainly and boldly without doing something about it. So we're trying to save face here, and that's all. They didn't go about the business saying all of that, of course, but they wanted them to know that. These drones and missiles, some of them flying as slower than some race cars travel, just over 100 miles per hour, and traveling a period of 7 hours across 2 and 3 different political states. And there was all kinds of time to shoot these things down before they got to Israel. And the United States took opportunity to do that. And they shot many of them down over places like Iraq and over places like Saudi and over places like Jordan before the missiles and drones ever even got to Israel. And then Israel put on their crowing hat and crowed that 99% of the missiles had been shot down. Only 1% got through. And Iran said, okay, we're through. There won't be a second wave. There won't be anything else. There shouldn't be any retaliation. We're through with it. We're finished. that was another signal that they were giving to the world that we've done all we needed to do. We don't want to start World War III. We don't think there should be any retaliation, but you struck first on our embassy, kill our people. This is in retaliation for that. Our retaliation killed none of your people. So you can't go crying to the world about poor Israel and what's going on. And we want this to be the end of it. Well, Israel hadn't said anything, but at least the United States came forward and said that they would help defend Israel against any attack from anyone else, but they would not be with Israel on any offensive measure against Iran. I thought that was interesting that Biden would say that, to let Israel know that if you strike back, you're on your own. And that's a big statement because Russia, some of other Iran's aides and buddies in crime, they haven't spoken yet. So it still bears watching. It's not over.
Well, the other piece of it, Val, is, they're still blowing Palestine all to pieces. Gaza is a complete mess. And they claim they still haven't been able to wipe Hamas completely out. And so to open up another front, I think, would be crazy on their part, on Israel's part, particularly since the United States said they're not going to come in and provide any material assistance to do any attacks, right, to anything offensively. They'd only participate defensively. I think Joe Biden has no other choice but to say that. I think because under what principle would they use to say that they would help Israel offensively when Israel is the instigator, right? They're the ones that, like you said, attacked the embassy in a foreign country, right? They killed Iranians in Syria. They didn't kill Iranians in Iran due to an attack that was in Israel. It was a more preemptive kind of thing, right? Which brings me to your role here, Val, which is the history professor and political science professor. I need a history lesson here. America could also not say anything because historically we've been on the wrong side of a lot of shit, right? We killed a whole bunch of Native Americans and we didn't give them the right to return home and do whatever they want to under the guise of defending their homeland. We've been on the wrong side of this in any number of other countries, Chile, Peru. Pick a place, right? We just haven't been on the right side of this in a lot of cases. Vietnam, whatever. So do Americans? This is the history question. Do Americans have any sense at all of how ridiculous it sounds that we'd even have to consider that we were going to support Israel and them attacking somebody? In light of all the other, stuff, baggage that we have as Americans. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of these commentators on these Sunday programs. Some of them are saying that.
Yes, they are, Ed. Some of them are just outright saying Israel has a right to defend itself against any aggressor, this, that, and the other. But, and they go back and they talk about things like the 6-Day War, and they talk about things like October the 7th, and they even go back and talk about the Holocaust. They talk about all of those events in which the Israelis were done wrong. Well, there are some other dates too. They even mention when Israelis were enslaved by the Egyptians. Nobody ever talks about 1948. Never talk about 1948. Why? That's the day that Palestinians were displaced to make whole a Israeli nation out of nothing, they thought. But you made it out of Palestinian territory. You displaced Palestinians to make an Israeli state in 1948, right after World War II, when Germany had occupied most of the Middle East. The British came in and whipped the Germans in North Africa, took all over that land, so they thought it belonged to them. It started because they were fighting the Germans anywhere on planet Earth that they happened to be. But the British looked at that as the Germans claim ownership of the Middle East. I just whooped them, so I own the Middle East now. So now I'm going to take these Jews who've been really treated badly by these Germans who just got defeated, and I'm going to give them their own land, a piece that their Bible, the Torah, says they belong here anyway, okay? So that's why I'm going to give this land to them. And the Palestinians were saying, hey, hold it. Wait a minute. This is what are you doing? Where am I supposed to go? What are you doing? And the British and the United States said, shut up, go somewhere and sit down. We'll tell you when it's your time to speak. And from that point on, Israel became God in the Middle East. The United States and Great Britain gave Israel all of these materialistic things, including weapons. It gave them money. It gave them access to intelligence, military intelligence. It made them king. That's why in the 6-Day War, they could beat all of these other nations combined, because it was like all of those other nations fighting the United States and Great Britain. It's what it was. If they only had to fight Israel and the little bows and arrows and slings that Israel had, it wouldn't have been a fight. But they were really fighting the United States and Great Britain, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they lost. And since then, Israel has become one of the 9 nations on the planet that's recognized as having nuclear weapons. Where did they get them from? They didn't have this access to fissionable materials, the knowledge to get all of the heavy water and the plutonium and uranium and all of these kind of things together. They didn't have that. The United States and Great Britain helped them access that. And there is some connections with the nuclear weapons that South Africa had before they got rid of apartheid and became a regular nation. Somebody keeps asking the questions, what happened to those nuclear weapons? And then somebody asked the question, well, where did Israel get their nuclear weapons? Well, I'll let people put 1 and 2 together on that one. But at any rate, Israel is the Mac Daddy king in the Middle East right now. Some people say that a long-range goal of the West is to westernize the entire planet. Their last piece is the Middle East. They've already done it in North and South America, in Australia. They have done it in Africa. You name parts of the world. They tried to do it in China. They did it in the Far East, the southeastern part. They tried it in India. Didn't work. They've tried it or made it work everywhere. And now the last piece is the Middle East. And that's where Israel comes in. They were put there for this, and the oil, of course, to protect that. And now Israel has become what they were running from back in 1941 and 1939. They have become that monster that they can attack someone in a third country that has an embassy in a third country, and they think they can do that without retribution. If you do something about that, then you are attacking them in an unprovoked manner.
Mm-hmm.
They can attack you, but you can't defend yourself without being the aggressor. But if you attack them first, then the whole world must come to their defense, because they have been attacked unmercifully by a party that should not have attacked the great state of Israel. And a lot of people are getting tired of that.
Yeah.
They're just tired of it. You can't be the bully and then claim that you told this guy to empty his pocket on the playground, and one of the coins that he threw to the ground jumped up and hit you in the ankle, so they gave you authority to slap that shit out of him, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Take all of his money. You can't have these kind of rules as to why you do things. And
Yeah.
that's what Israel is doing right now. They are making up their own rules. This is why we need to be a dominant force, and we need to have all of the weaponry, and all of the civilized nations of the world need to come to our defense when we decide that we are on the defensive. And if we want to kill 35,000 people in Gaza, that's our business, because they should have never killed 1,000 of our people in Israel. And we won't stop until we get ready to. And anybody not on our side is against us. You just get tired of it after a while.
Yeah.
And I'm on the
Well,
side that's already tired of it right now.
well, I want to remind folks you're listening to or watching The Deal with Ed Clark and Val Atkinson this Sunday, the 4th of April, 2024. And we're back here again talking about Israel in the Middle East and another conflagration. This time, Iran shot some missiles and sent some drones in the direction of Israel. I just say in the direction of Israel, Val, because they didn't do much in terms of damage and having an impact that way. But there is an impact. In the time we got left in this segment, I want to talk about the other countries that are involved here. There's never just Israel and Iran or Israel and whoever. It's always Israel and Russia and Iran. It's always Israel, Russia, and Syria. Israel, Russia, and the United States. Israel, Russia, and China. And a lot of states around the world, a lot of countries around the world are sort of in the same place you are, Val. They're a little bit weary and tired of having to speak about Israel and whether or not, it's okay for them to do what they want to do. So when somebody criticizes the state of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, and they say, hey, enough's enough in Gaza. What are your plans on trying to, retaliate for Iran? Can Israel afford to further antagonize Russia and China and the other states that are South Africa who are criticizing them, because they don't have a whole bunch of friends on this. And my suspicion is that Iran doesn't want to be in a full-blown war with Israel, right? I mean, to what end? I mean, what are you gonna get for you'll get some more people killed and probably not overturn things for the same reason that you talked about earlier, that the United States funds Israel. And so America is basically the proxy for Israel. So Iran knows that they could never just fully try to blow Israel off the face of the earth because the Americans will be there. So I guess the long way around this, Val, is what does China do and Russia do and South Africa and some of these other countries that have been critical of Israel?
Well, what they've got to hope is that the Israeli-Iranian conflict does not boil over and start World War III. Nobody wins World War III. You got to understand that. We have some hawks in this country who want to make us think that we could take out Russia and China and still come out on the other side and rebuild and be okay. There's no country on the planet that has more nuclear weapons than Russia. There's no country on the planet that has more powerful nuclear weapons than Russia. And for them to, if you take out 99% of their weapons, Ed, that would mean that they would still have somewhere between 60 and 70 nuclear weapons, each one 100 times more powerful than the ones we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I don't need to tell you what that could do to major cities in the United States of America. And so you don't want that kind of war. And that's just saying that you knock out 99% of their 6,200 missiles that they got. If you knock out 99%. And if you knock out only 90%, I mean, you can do the math on that. It's crazy. But I think that the United States and all of its allies, the West, are going to try to do everything they can do to have more Ukraines and Taiwans and Hong Kongs of the world to steam up to the top so that we can westernize the world, take over the planet, and westernize the world without a shot being fired. That's what we want to see. That's what was supposed to have happened with Hong Kong, with Taiwan, and that's what was supposed to happen with Israel. And you could go and name a few others, but that strategy is not working. You got people who are deciding now, no, I'm not going to sit back and let you give a few beads and trinkets and mirrors to these people and get them lacking full democracy and predatory capitalism and throw aside our customs and values and culture that we've been living under for the last several centuries. I'm not going to let you do that. And we don't fire a shot because nobody's fired at us. I know what you're doing. You're trying to do this thing without firing a shot, and we're not going to let you do it. So that starts the mess. And that's exactly what I just mentioned is exactly what happened in Taiwan. Taiwan got used to making these chips and getting all of that money that the chips made. And if you go over to Taipei, which I've been there and spent two of the best weeks of my life there. But anyway, you go to sleep and you wake up one morning, you come out and you walk the street, you wouldn't know if you were in Chicago or Vegas or Philadelphia or Taipei. You wouldn't know the difference. And that's the way we want it, because once you get that going on in a country, then you offer them what's going on in Moscow and Petersburg and Leningrad and places like that and say, which one do you want? They'll take the Vegas and the New York deal. Okay. So you've given the people a piece of that standard of living and that way of life. And then you say, why do we need to fight? Just let the people decide what they want. But you had a lot to do with this, Ed. And when I said you, I mean the American people. When you read books like Rogue State by William Blum, who used a former CIA agent, or Mr. What is his name now? Kuntzner. He had a book called Overthrow. All of these examples of people of countries around the world that the West has gone into and did the very thing that I'm talking about, you'll understand how we plan to westernize the planet, the entire planet. So you're going to see more things like what happened on 9/11. 9/11 was an ingenious method of people fighting back against the westernization of the planet without going toe-to-toe, rifle to rifle with the United States and the rest of the world, because they know they can't win that. So the next time it'll be far different. Like 9/11 surprised everybody.
Yeah.
How did they come up with that idea? Get 19 guys and hijack planes and fly them into buildings and fly them into whatever and that sort of thing. The next one is going to be even more out of the box thinking than that, because that's the only thing left. They cannot mount a traditional, conventional war or conventional type of conflict with anybody in the West, because all the other nations are going to come and protect it and expect to win or do anything. So the only thing left to them is the 9/11s of the world and that sort of thing.
Well, I think that should give everybody pause, because again, 9/11, like you said, was insidiously ingenious in that, they used the one thing that Americans had gotten so used to doing and nonchalantly going through the airport, and now they've turned that into a whole thing. And so 20 some years later, it's odious to go through the airport, right? All the trouble you got to go to taking off stuff and whatever else in TSA, it created a whole nother infrastructure. But I hear some music in my ear. That means we need to take a break. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to come back to the United States and talk about Donald Trump and all his travails, because he's going to be in court tomorrow. I want to find out if he's really going to testify like he says he is. But we also want to talk about the impact on the 2024 election and democracy in danger, whether Trump wins or not. And so stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Hi, my name is Sherelle James, and I am CEO and co-owner of My Local CFO. We provide outsourced fractional CFO services, and what that means is that as a business owner, you are good at what you do, but sometimes not so good when it comes to the numbers. And so we handle that for you. We help you understand what your numbers are saying so that you can make better strategic decisions, as well as help you budget and forecast so you know where you're going for the future. So the client experience here at My Local CFO, from the time they call us or they walk through our door asking us about the services that we have, is a family-oriented one that we want them to be at ease and relaxed, because we know when you're dealing with your finances, that's a stressful place.
My local CFO cared. They would always answer my phone calls, be there when I needed, and it was a feeling that I had with that company.
There's a lot of big CPA firms and accounting firms out there, but they're mostly worried about the larger clients and not the smaller guys that need the help, the startup companies. And that's what My Local CFO does.
Hello, my name is Derek James. I am the co-owner of My Local CFO. A client may need My Local CFO services because we're kind of the bridge between the average bookkeeper and your yearly visit with your CPA.
My Local CFO works with our clients not only to meet their needs, but to exceed their needs.
If you're just starting a business, there is no way possible that you can stay on top of the financials, take care of the marketing, perform the work. You need a competent team that can help you to stay on top of your financial situation. My Local CFO is it.
My Local CFO fits a niche that's in today's small business climate. People need good accounting, but they don't need full-time accountants.
My Local CFO, financial solutions for a stronger future.
And welcome back to our second segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We are talking about stuff like we are wont to do. And this time we're talking about stuff on April 14th, 2024. And we led off talking about Israel because we couldn't help but lead off talk about that. Since October 7th, it's been nonstop, Val. And then the decimation in Palestine is unprecedented, I would say. Now we have this introduction of Iran into the mix because Israel provoked it. I'm just going to, let's not candy coat it, right? They provoked it. They went and killed some people. Now, we probably don't have much to say because, we've done stuff like that ourselves. We've had CIA operatives to go in and unstabilize and destabilize countries. So I guess Joe Biden took the only course of action he could take, which was to say that we were not going to be participants in any offensive action. So I'm glad he said that. Which leads me to, Val, what's going to happen electorally because of what's happening in Israel. We've heard a lot of talk about young people being upset about what's going on in Gaza. And I take that for what it is, right? It's probably true. Some young people are upset. But again, context matters here. Say you don't support Joe Biden because of what's happening in Israel and what American policy is. What I've been trying to tell young people is that policy has been the same policy for since 1948. Every president has said that they supported Israel and would go to the mat for him. So let's start talking about 2024 election in that vein first. Joe Biden says he's not going to act offensively. He's told Netanyahu that he needs to, bring this thing to a halt in Gaza or whatever. But there's still young people threatening not to participate in the political process or vote for Cornel West or whatever the hell they want to do, with the risk of putting a non-democratic in Democratic, not Democratic Party, but Democratic in somebody who's anti-democratic in Trump, who is a wannabe dictator, back into office because you're mad at Joe Biden about the long-standing U.S. policy. Explain that to me, Val. Why are young people, are they just that stupid? I want to not just say young people, but I'll say Americans in general. And I know that doesn't sound good to say, but are people stupid and don't know what this is really about?
They fail to be able to prioritize at the wrong time, Ed. And they got to understand that keeping Donald Trump out of the White House is of the highest priority in a political sense. Nothing can trump that. Nothing can trump keeping Trump out. They failed to be able to do that. And they are really angry about what's going on in Gaza because they feel some kinness with the Palestinians because of what, especially African Americans, because of what we went through and to a degree still are going through here in the United States of America. And what people all around the world are going through at the hands of the rich and powerful, and in many cases, at the hands of white supremacists. They don't like to see a bully taking advantage of helpless people. And this is what they see going on in Gaza, in Palestine, in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict over there. They see that, a bully taking advantage of helpless people. And I don't think Joe Biden understands that. Somebody in Joe Biden's camp is telling him that would tell them to go to the store, that the prices of bread has gone down and the prices at the gas pump are lower than they have been on average over the past 3 years. And then maybe they will come off of this anti-Israeli thing. That's an insult to people's decision making. You can't tell me that you're going to offer me 10 cents a gallon reduction on gas, and I'm going to say, okay, Mr. Palestinian, I'm sorry, you just got to be put on the back burner. You got to, go about the business of allowing the Israelis to treat you horribly because my gas bill is going down now. Well, you weren't a supporter of Palestinians in the first place if those are your real priorities. And I go back to the first statement I made on this, Ed. Some people just have their priorities tangled. And I don't know how the Biden administration is going to get through this, but I do know that the answer is not to tell African Americans how well they are doing. Unemployment is the lowest it's been. Inflation is really coming down. I gave you a whole bunch of money. I did something about student loans. I'm doing more about student loans. You might as well just say, hey, I'm putting money in your pocket. You need to stop worrying about people that have no effect on you, because that ain't what it's about. Mm-hmm. And until he understands this, he runs the risk of losing votes. None of these people are going to vote for Donald Trump, but to stay home, if you are a vote that Democrats have been depending upon, and you stay home and don't vote for anybody, that's a lost vote. Yeah. And too many of them in the wrong state can be disastrous for the Biden administration.
And too many is not many, right? Because you talk about 14, 20,000 people is it in some, like in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or even in Georgia. I mean, had Fulton County not turned out, we have a different outcome. And on the 2024 election, I've been seeing a lot of stories in the last 2 or 3 weeks where people are doing this electoral vote count. They're going through and going every permutation of how Trump can get to 270. And there's this one political pollster, Lunsford, who shows up on everything. He's a Republican pollster. He did say Trump was going to lose in the last election, 2020. But now he says that Trump has a good chance of winning in 24. But Val, so here's the next, how we segue out of this. He's going on trial tomorrow, like a real criminal trial. Not the other stuff has been theater so far, right? Even the criminal trial down in Florida, because Judge Cannon is a jerk. In Fulton County, Fonnie Willis and it, got tied up in whatever that mess is down there. Alvin Bragg and Letitia James have been able to extract blood out of Donald Trump. Letitia James got $400 million hemmed up, and Trump can't even pay the $175 that he got it reduced to because he lied and said that, he couldn't get a bond. And then when he got a bond, supposedly, the money is kind of funny. And now he has to go on criminal trial with Alvin Bragg. And it should not be lost on anybody that a lot of these are colored people who are prosecuting him. So when these pollsters tell me that it's a statistical dead heat and Donald Trump can still win, do you mean to tell me all those fever dreams I had about him being in a jumpsuit and having to get fingerprinted and perk walk and all that, he's gone through most of that stuff? Are you telling me that it ain't going to matter in the end and this clown can still win? Or are we at that point, Val?
I think we are, Ed. I'm sorry to be the one to break it to you, but I think we are at that point because what's really on trial, go back to the criminal justice system here, what's really on trial is American democracy. And the linchpin to all of this is something that we call culture. The average white America is being given a choice. Do what your Constitution says you must do and uphold this thing called the United States of America, the greatest country on the planet that's ever been. Vote your individual choice as to who is the best person to lead this country and see your country go down the hole because blacks and browns are going to take over if people have fair, unfettered elections. Do that. Or vote in Donald Trump, who will get rid of democracy, revert to something called white minority rule, but keep our culture intact, where white people will continue to run not only this country, but be leaders in the Western world. That's what they're dealing with. That's why Trump is so close, or in some cases ahead in the polls. You got some people out there, what you and I call good white folks. They are the people, your next door neighbor, Ed, the guy that runs the bar downstairs in the lounge, okay? The guy who drives the bus route that you get on sometime when you ride the bus to work. The guy who coaches your daughter in soccer, coaches your son in basketball. All these white people are voting for Trump, and you smile and laugh and joke with them every day, thinking that they're your friends. That's where they're getting the votes, because they are voting for their culture to continue. Yeah. They are voting to keep people away from running this country that don't have the value systems, don't have the experience or wherewithal to keep America on top. And number one, they don't want these people running things. But if they don't do something like elect Donald Trump, then and if you allow them to have free and unfettered elections, then these people are going to get into office, get into places, and they'll be running the country. Mm-hmm. And they don't like the idea of that, of non-white people running America.
Well, Val, I was listening to, there's a very interesting podcast called Throughline that I'll recommend to people. I listened to it because they do a deep dive into a story. And this week, they were talking about the 14th Amendment and the whole notion that if you were born here, you were a citizen. And so they were talking about a lot of the arguments that were going on at the time. One of the arguments was that these Confederates who had turned against the country and were treasonous should not be allowed to be part of the government. That was one aspect of it, right? So you got these 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, the Civil Rights Amendments, right after the Civil War, the Reconstruction Amendments. And the first thing that happens, as soon as white folks had an opportunity to undo it, they did by passing black codes. So you could be a black dude and not have a job. And you didn't have a job because nobody would employ Black people in regular jobs. You had to be a sharecropper or something else. And if you weren't, you'd be a vagrant.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would enter you into the criminal justice system and put you right back in involuntary servitude, because you lose citizenship for all intent and purpose, because you can't vote anymore, which is the thing that I think really is what this is all about, is trying to keep people from voting, right? Either scare them into not voting, take away their voting rights and not make it odious to restore your voting rights, or make it so odious just to vote, getting the ID and all this other stuff. When they know since 1789, white folks never worried about people having an ID because it was easy. Only white men could vote at first, right? And only white men could own property. Well, that was all recorded at the courthouse, right? So, and then when you try to get rights to everybody with these Reconstruction amendments, all of a sudden, even the unwashed white people could vote. And the rich white people didn't really care for that all that much. And I still don't think they do. But they have figured out how to convince those people that they are doing worse because Black people have something. They've managed to turn this into zero-sum politics, right? If he gets some, you get nothing. That's the story they tell, which brings me to North Carolina again. We seem to talk about North Carolina a lot lately, not just because we live here, but because there is a guy who's running for governor that looks like me and you, but plays zero-sum politics. His name is Mark Robinson. Let's take a look at this and then we'll talk about it.
National report just out details what led to North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson failing to file his federal income taxes for 5 years straight.
The Republican nominee for governor has been in hot water before. However, this is something his campaign is not disputing. Instead, it points to the fact that it happened more than 2 decades ago.
And a campaign spokesperson told WCNC Charlotte's Nate Morabito Robinson has made no secret of his past struggles.
The current lieutenant governor is not afraid to speak his mind, known for his polarizing views on many social issues. And his campaign says he's not hidden his past economic challenges either. An ABC News report found in the years leading up to Robinson and his wife filing for bankruptcy in 2003, amid severe financial struggles, he failed to file income taxes from 1998 to 2002. But ultimately filed his back taxes in May 2003 after the IRS took up the matter in bankruptcy court. ABC also detailed just how dire things were for Robinson at the time, with hardly any money to his name and significant debt. It builds on reporting done from WRAL, the NBC affiliate in Raleigh. Back in 2022, they outlined the income tax filing failures, but also a failure to pay delinquent vehicle county taxes here in North Carolina for 5 different years between 2006 to 2018. In response to ABC's reporting, Robinson's campaign called this old news and an effort to distract voters. His communication director told me in a statement, the lieutenant governor has overcome many challenges, financial and others, in his past. He's lived the struggles that families across North Carolina are facing every day.
Mark Robinson looks like a brother. He talks like a storefront preacher, which he is. He made his claim to fame saying that Barack Obama was trying to take guns away from good white folk. And so the people in Guilford County, North Carolina, Greensboro, for those people who aren't familiar with North Carolina geography, he's from the Greensboro High Point area, and he has the potential to become the governor of the state of North Carolina. Now, this week, it emerged, it's not new news, but it reemerged that he didn't file taxes for 5 years. He's been bankrupt multiple times. His wife ran a daycare, and she took federal money because most of her clientele were people who needed it. At the same time, Mark Robinson was criticizing people for having public assistance. His then girlfriend, ultimately his wife, had an abortion, but he doesn't want anybody having an abortion. I could go down the list, and he just says he hates trans people. He talks about gay people all the time. He says, Val, that he's even better than Martin Luther King Jr. himself, that Mark Robinson has done more, and Donald Trump has done more for Black people than Martin Luther King ever did. and this guy could be governor. Val, talk to me. Tell me that it's really not true that he has a chance. Now, all the polling that I've seen, he doesn't poll anywhere near the same numbers that Donald Trump is polling in North Carolina. North Carolina, Biden and Trump are dead heat. But in the governor's race, Josh Stein still leads Mark Robinson. Will that hold? Is there anything at all that you think would make it possible for Mark Robinson to become the next governor in North Carolina?
North Carolina will not have the likes of Mr. Robinson as governor anytime soon. There is a line that a lot of whites won't cross. Even when whites were electing people like George W. Bush and Donald Trump as presidents, they still were concerned about who would be governor of the state of North Carolina. You had a guy named James Baxter Hunt who won the governorship 4 times. And then he was followed by a guy named Mike Easley, who did it twice. Beverly Perdue. Now you had Roy Cooper, who's doing it twice. Democrats have a long history of doing well in the gubernatorial race here in North Carolina. And Mark Robinson doesn't have the wherewithal to break any of that string up. He will lose and lose badly to Josh Stein. Josh Stein has a good record. The last 3 of the last 4 governors for the state of North Carolina has been attorney generals. Prior to, if Josh Stein gets elected, it would be 3 or 4. Josh Stein's, Roy Cooper, and Mike Easley all were attorney generals for the state of North Carolina prior to becoming governor. And that weighs a lot on people voting out in the rural areas, out in Clay County and out in those areas where you and your family come from, Ed. But it's the kind of thing where it's very, very important to them who's going to do what for them. These are people who are not in Cary, North Carolina, and Matthews, North Carolina, and some of the other places I could name where there are a lot of zeros onto their bank account. These people that live very, very sparsely, and they vote for Democrats to keep the little money they do have coming in. Mark Robinson doesn't understand that. He thinks that because he has an R by the end of his name, that people are going to vote for him and for Donald Trump, and he's going to ride on Donald Trump's coattails right into the governor's mansion, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I feel sorry for him because he doesn't understand this, and he's got a long way to go. Once he fails to become governor, he won't have a whole lot to do.
Yeah.
There's not another road for him to come back and get on to come back up to prominence again. He will fade out forever. Nobody will want to have anything to do with him again. He has no idea of what the future holds for him if he loses this race as governor in North Carolina. He may want to relocate. There will be no future, political future in North Carolina for Mark Robinson. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Well, I think it made me think of Cameron in Kentucky. He couldn't win against Brashear. Right. And he had the endorsement of Donald Trump. Makes me think of Herschel Walker. He couldn't win in Georgia. You would have thought that would have been a cakewalk, right? Everybody else in Georgia is a Republican, but they can't win the Senate. And the reason why is because people go, wait a minute, in a statewide election, a lot of those white people stay home when there's a black R. Despite that person sullying their reputation, Tim Scott is one of the few lucky ones, right? To have a statewide electorate that can elect him. But I digress. Hey, I hear some music. So let's take a break, and when we come back, we need to talk about Val's favorite football player of all time, O.J. Simpson, and his recent demise from cancer, which is not, it's sad for his family. But we talk about the legacy of O.J. Simpson trial and that kind of stuff. And then we also want to talk a little golf. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this.
Look at Uncle Reggie.
Look at my little girl.
Dad, did you decide on surgery or radiation for your cancer treatment?
I don't know. It didn't help Reggie all that much.
I know that was hard. By the time the doctors found Uncle Reggie's cancer, there wasn't much anyone could do.
Well, the doctor said something about clinical trials.
Why am I just hearing about this now? I recommend clinical trials for patients all the time.
It's different. You're a dermatologist.
It really isn't. Clinical trials are how we find new ways to care for people. It's how treatment gets better. Did you know there are strict guidelines they have to follow to keep patients safe? Everything starts with the clinical trial. Even your fancy auto-focusing eyeglasses.
Hey, I love these glasses. But we're talking about cancer. I'm not going to be somebody's guinea pig.
I hear you, Dad. There are a lot of reasons Black people don't trust the healthcare system. There's still a long way to go, but avoiding clinical trials won't solve the problem for us.
What problem?
Black people have the highest chance of dying from cancer. And yet only 5% of people in clinical trials are Black. If we want to be part of the latest breakthroughs, we have to know all of our options.
I guess I didn't know.
Let's talk about it, Dad. If you don't want to do it for yourself, will you at least think about it? For us.
All right, let's have a look.
Learn more about cancer clinical trials at clinicaltrials.gov or cancer.uillinois.edu. This message was supported by the V Foundation for Cancer Research.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Sunday, April 14th, 2024. You hear some sirens in the background, maybe. The studio is high above Six Forks Road here in Raleigh, and it seems like there's something going on down there. So hopefully that won't bother you too much, and they'll clear up in just a minute. But Val, you know, when we went out, I said I wanted to talk a little bit about the legacy of O.J. Simpson. Dynamite football player, could run his ass off. One of the best all time in terms of running back in college and in the pros. Went on to be an actor, was successful at that. He also went on to run through airports in one of the most famous commercials of all time, Hertz. But the end of his life ended with a slow speed chase through LA in a Bronco, in a white Bronco, and being accused of killing his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, who was not his first wife. He married a sister the first go around and had children with her. But then he had children with Nicole Brown Simpson, and those were the only children that actually ever showed up anywhere on TV, as if, you know, he wasn't a full human being. But that's besides the point. People have characterized the O.J. trial for the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson as being the trial of the century. And, you know, they had the Netflix thing on, and one of the most viewed things ever, and yada, yada, yada. And O.J. stayed in people's imaginations a lot longer than he should have. You know, and I know that this had to do with the fact that there was a dead white woman. And so Othello kind of, story behind it. This prominent Black man kills his white wife, and then white people can't get over it. And I remember, Val, the day the verdict came out. We were in the office, and the TV was on, and people stood around the TV with arms folded, and it said not guilty. And almost to a person, all the white people were aghast, and all the Black people cheered. And I don't think they were cheering that Nicole Brown Simpson was dead. They were cheering that, hey, here's some comeuppance. You know, this isn't the typical thing where a Black guy goes down just because they want him to go down. because black folks have been getting lynched and everything else for years. And so O.J. Simpson is an archetype. He's not your son or your brother or your husband, but he's a stand-in for all the black men who have been lynched and mistreated for supposedly doing bad things to white women. So here's a long way around to the question, Val. What do you think the legacy of that trial was for you? And in real terms, did it do anything to shift people's thinking about race and race relations and all that stuff when it happened? And then just O.J. Simpson, as a person, never ever been able to recover and become fully back into the fold with society.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And that's what a lot of people got after it. My frat brother, Johnny Cochran, became the lead attorney in the final days of that trial. And he became a rock star almost, a movie star. He led everything to be where it was. And he and F. Lee Bailey kind of turned things around at the end and made Mark Furman the object of the trial, and the things that he did wrong and the things that the police department did wrong, as opposed to whether or not O.J. Simpson actually killed his wife and her date. And of course, a lot of black people cheered because they were fans of O.J. on the football field, on the big screen, and in commercials. They loved him. He was an attractive young man, very successful young man, and they wanted to see him do well, not go out that way. So that's why they won. This was a long trial, and you have to understand that it was a buildup by the media. And now the verdict is announced in real time, and somebody's going to cheer and somebody is going to be aghast. And that's why, as you said, people in your office standing around, the white folks aghast and the black folks cheering. That's sort of why a lot of that happened that way. But in the end, I think that some people in the criminal justice system wanted so badly to get Orenthal James Simpson for something that these charges, the civil charges where he had to pay $30 million, and the trumped up, I call it, charges about kidnapping and robbery and all of this stuff from things that belonged to him. And he was trying to take them back and spend 8 years in the lockup for that. What was payback for a jury nullification that he had nothing to do with. He didn't hold a gun at the juror's head and said, "Hey, you will make me innocent here," but he had to pay for that. And in the long run, white America, some white Americans just could never forgive O.J. for that. I think black America kind of moved on. And when I heard of his demise yesterday, day before, the thing that stuck in my mind was the method of his death, prostate cancer. Because I have been one who's been trying to tell my fellow black senior citizens, hey, go get your PSA check, brother. Catch prostate early. Because as a black American, we always say you either going to die of prostate cancer or from it. Of it or from it. So, or with it, you know what I mean? And so that was his form of death. And I'm a prostate cancer survivor, so I'm close to it. I got skin in that game. And I want people to listen at that. O.J. slow speed Bronco chasing, all of that. His exploits on the football field, all that, that's fine and one thing or the other. But he was a human being. He was a man. He lived 76 years on this planet, and he died of prostate cancer. Take something from that. Go get your health checked out. Check and see what your PSAs are, and take care of yourself. That's number one that I think we should take, and not use this as something to determine whether he actually killed Nicole Brown Simpson or not. his death won't prove that one way or the other. But we can take better care of ourselves. And that's what I think OJ would want to send a message by his death to everybody. It's going to take care of him.
Well, speaking of that, I had my PSA test a couple of weeks ago and had good news.
Good.
I'm scheduled for my 5-year colonoscopy. I just had a birthday. And so, you know, I have been trying to get used to, Val, of getting my senior citizen discounts. Sometimes I forget, but now I'm, you know, I try to make sure that, you know, I get them. And on a serious note, back to what you said, colored men have problems when you get past 60. We don't fare so well. And so if I could say anything, and you saw the in the break when we came back in, the commercial during the break was about getting your prostate cancer screening, and we do take that serious here. I want you to do that because we don't do good, and we got enough travails and troubles as it is, without having to die early from treatable cancers. And you know, Val's a testament that if you catch this stuff early, it is possible to beat this stuff and go on and live a happy, healthy life. And so I take that to heart, what you say about, you know, at least one lesson from OJ is, you know, make sure you get that prostate screening, that kind of thing. Before we run out of time, Val, there's a Kabla Asian dude. His name is Tiger Woods, and he has an uneasy. He kind of reminds me of OJ, right? Black folks loved him as a kid. You know, saw him come into prominence, and when he was winning the Masters, just beating the snot out of people, and you got people making fun, saying that they were going to have watermelon at the Masters dinner and stuff like that. This isn't very many years ago, right? Now Tiger Woods is a very grown man in his 40s, and he has a legacy for a lot of reasons. I played golf this morning, and I was at the course. I hadn't seen that many black people, young black people, ever at a golf course. I was just, you know, a little public course, you know, par 3. But there were so many young black kids out there playing golf, and it was like, man, you know, that's actually due to Tiger Woods. Mm-hmm. So as we speak, the Masters is going on now. Tiger, you know, he's not that guy that's always in the hunt for the Masters title like he used to be, and that's why you had to look at the Masters on Sunday, because he was going to be creeping around the edge, right, and threatening to win. But he did something this year, Val, that I know you wanted to talk about. Tell us what Tiger Woods was able to do this year.
Well, coming into this year's Masters tournament, Tiger had tied the record for consecutive cuts being made. And for you non-golfers out there, making the cut means that there may be 144 golfers who start the tournament on Thursday. It's a 4-day tournament. And the first 2 days will decide who played the last 2 days. It's called making the cut. And they take the top 72 or however many golfers, and they let them play on Saturday and Sunday for the championship. And Tiger had done this 23 times in a row at the Masters. So this was going to be the opportunity for him to have the outright record of having made the cut more consecutive times than any other golfer to ever play in that tournament. And he needed to be, in most cases, in order to make the cut, you have to be within 10 strokes of the leader. And of course, the leader at the end of Friday's play was 6 under par. And I think Tiger was over par. He was, but he was only 1 over. So obviously he was within that 10 stroke. limit, and he made the cut, as it were. But he knew he wasn't playing that well, and maybe things didn't go right off the first tee and during the first 9 on yesterday, Saturday, and he ended up shooting one of my scores. He shot a 42 on the front. So when things ended up on Saturday, he was 18 strokes behind the leader. So going in today's play, there is no chance that he'll be able to make up 18 strokes. You only play 18 holes, make up 18 strokes. But he still managed to make the record of having made the cut 24 times consecutively, more than any other human being that's ever played in the Masters tournament. And we take our hats off to him for that and wish him well going forward, Ed.
Yeah, and like I said, I know that those kids have never seen Tiger at his prime. I bet you they were 13, 14 years old out there today. And it was groups of them. I was like, I wonder if there's some sort of, club or whatever. But it was a bunch of them. And it made me feel some kind of way just to see them out there because they were relaxed. They were hitting the ball clean. They knew the rules, and they were comporting themselves, like good golfers do, but they were also having a good time. And Tiger Woods, despite being Kabbalah Asian, is probably the reason they're out there. That's not to say anything about Calvin Peete, which I think is one of the baddest golfers ever. He made the green in regulation more than anybody else. He was a consummate professional, and there's other black golfers that didn't get their due, but I think some of those kids out there today are probably going to be on the tour at some point. Anyway, Val, before we end up here, one last thing. This is sports related too. We had made some predictions about the NCAA tournament. Somebody, team named UConn or something, they won, whatever. And then on the women's side, they had a bigger audience than the men's tournament, supposedly. And then on top of that, the darling of the women's side, Catlin Clark, lost again. However, at the end of the game, you would have thought that Iowa won. Now, there's been a little bit of correction in the last week as people have started to go, wait a minute, Yes, Catlin Clark, yeah. But she got beat again. And Dawn Staley has won 3 out of 5 and yada, yada, yada. They've lost like 8 games in 5 years or something crazy, right? And there's been some self-correction there, and people are not, so into Catlin Clark, and I think by next year things will come back down to earth. But what was your assessment of the women's game now? Is it just because it was time they were due, or is it because there's so many sports on TV that you can spread some of this thing out or whatever? What's the comeuppance of Catlin Clark and then her inability to win, but still managing to bring people to the game?
Catlin Clark, she's almost a victim here because the protagonist in all of this is the media. The media looking for the great white hope, and what happened to be women's basketball, men's basketball, it doesn't matter. They are always looking for that, particularly in sports that are dominated by non-whites, like basketball and football. They're looking for the great white hope. And, they should listen to Larry Bird about that. Larry Bird was one of the few guys that I know about, because I read his statements, that he got the media straight. And he says, hey, I know what you guys are doing. You're trying to make me look good. You're trying to say my refuse don't stink. He used other words. And he says, I'm pretty good by myself. I don't need you guys to make me better than what I really am. And the media didn't like that. And you had to hunt in a lot of different places to find that statement. But the media took the light off of him a little bit. They still let it shine. But I love the fact that he told them, I don't need y'all to make me bigger than what I am. I'm good on my own. You don't need to make me bigger than what I am because I'm white. And from that point on, Larry Bird became one of my favorite ball players. And I didn't like him that much in the beginning. So I was honest enough to look myself in the mirror and say that you allowed the media to determine which player you like and didn't like because of what they were trying to do based on racial issues. So I kind of try to back off of that a little bit and see through the weeds and not let the media tell me who's the best player and why and all of that. And get back to your initial question about Catlin. Catlin is a fantastic shooter. I mean, you can't give her no inches. She is a fantastic shooter. She hasn't mastered the other two shots yet. That's the pull up and the going all the way to the hole and laying it in with either hand behind the back. She hasn't mastered all of that stuff, but she is a spot up shooter. She is deficient on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't know where she is in terms of understanding basketball strategies and that kind of thing. But just plain old shooting, spot up shooting, she is a one hell of a talent. But that's not enough at the level she's going at. There are a lot of people, if you leave them alone, it can fill it up. But you're going to have to do a lot more than that up there. And I wish her well because she's a good shooter. But I hope she doesn't let these hunters of the great white hope blow her mind up and make her think she's more than what she is. She needs to listen to Larry Bird.
Yeah, well, that's a good assessment. You know, whether it's boxing or basketball or even football, there's always this tendency to try to make. And then when Tiger was dominating golf, there was always going to be the next young talent that was going to, Sergio was going to be Tiger or whatever, But he was good, but he never was Tiger, whatever, yada yada. Anyway, we wasted enough of your time. So as I want to do most of the time, Val, you got anything else you want to tell us or anything we need to be looking out for?
I would just say stay close to the deal with Ed Clark and Val Atkinson. We got a lot of good stuff coming up, folks. You're missing it. You're missing a lot. Tell your friends about us. Make sure they get out there and take a listen to us because we're working real hard to make this a thing that everybody needs to be aware of and be cognizant of what we do. And your job is to spread the news for us. So we want you to do that. And I'm going to hold you to it to make sure you do.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that, Val. Yeah, on any of the fine podcast platforms, we're available on the YouTubes and on Facebook and all the other places you can find us. We get more and more subscribers all the time. We want to continue to grow that because we believe we give a unique take on the news. And it's we actually kind of know what we're talking about compared to some other folks that get on and run off at the mouth. Anyway, it is beautiful here in North Carolina today. Like I said, it was so beautiful that I pulled out my golf clubs for the first time since the pandemic and took a walk this morning. I feel so much better, other than the pollen. So you guys, whatever you do, go out and do something good for somebody today. And I really do mean that. And come back to see us next time on another edition of The Deal. Bye.